Because man is a union of both soul and body, the practice of orthodoxy therefore appeals to and involves the whole man. It is not just his mind and his emotions to which this faith connects, but it is also all the senses. Ours is very much a bodily faith, whether it is the prostrations of the penitent during Great Lent, the sound of the otherworldly chanting of our church musicians, the smell of incense used in almost every worship service, the fasting from animal products we undertake for nearly half the days of the year, or the touch and the taste of the holy mysteries. The physicality of spiritual life is particularly expressed through the practice of asceticism. And it is probably not too daring to say that Orthodoxy is now the only major Christian communion in the world that still takes asceticism seriously. Of course, though rare, there are ascetical Christians outside of the Orthodox Church. But they are usually confined to monasteries or otherwise categorized as special in their own churches. But Orthodoxy expects asceticism of all of our members. In its bodily aspect, asceticism, which is in Greek askesis, which originally referred to athletic training, this comprises the kind of physical practices you might expect: fasting, prostrations, kneeling, meditative prayer, sexual continence, non-possessiveness. But at its heart, the purpose of asceticism is to retrain the will, to make it receptive to divine grace and action. Thus, we do not understand such things as sacrifices that we make for God, nor as self-punishment to atone for sins. Rather, they are simply what the word itself truly means: athletic training for the great contest of man's existence, the struggle to become fully human, to come back into communion with the divine, and to be suffused with the divine presence. That also means that asceticism is not an absolute set of laws, but rather is dynamic in its application, always suited specifically to the believer by his father confessor, who serves as a guide and a companion on the way. Because the invisible and untouchable God chose to become a visible and touchable part of his creation, as the God-man Jesus Christ. The Christian life is properly visible and touchable as well. It cannot be reduced to the experience of conversion and then the subsequent attempts to live a moral life. Rather, Orthodox Christianity is about coming into contact with holiness, usually mediated through the physical experience of the senses, and then being transformed by that holiness. Let's draw this to a close. It's sometimes been said regarding the Orthodox Church that it is mystical, while the two main types of Western Christianity are said to be rational. Sometimes I suspect some Orthodox Christians, at least, of saying this so they do not have to explain why it is that so much of our structure and even our theological language cannot be laid out in any codified, strictly consistent way. Again, we do not belong to an organized religion. But there is nevertheless something to this characterization of Orthodoxy as mystical. What we must not understand mystical to mean here is something that is anti-rational. Far from being anti-rational or anti-intellectual, Orthodoxy has a robust intellectual tradition that includes some of the greatest minds in history. Its theological appropriation of and reconstitution of Greco-Roman intellectual culture, for instance, was nothing short of revolutionary. Likewise, we must also not understand mystical to mean esoteric, as though this is a flavor of Christianity that is in pursuit of spiritual experiences, or that is suited only to people of a particularly obscure and rarefied kind of spiritual taste. We can say this, though. If you are native to the West, while Orthodoxy may appear to have many of the same features and vocabulary of the Christianity with which you may be familiar, it is not the same thing. Not really. We perceive here as unknown, and yet well known. And yet again as unknown. Such ambiguities are normal in this theological realm. which is indeed mystical. In its most fundamental sense, the mystical quality of orthodoxy has to do with its basic aim, the union of the created with the uncreated, and most especially of the created man with his uncreated creator. With that goal, it is incongruous to speak of a logical system by which that which is invisible, ineffable, and infinite may be joined with the finite. Orthodoxy is not a system. Rather, we may think of the spiritual world of Orthodox Christianity as a kind of atmosphere, an ambient, pervasive, organically coherent world to itself, into which the human person enters, not by rational discourses, but simply by entrance, by bringing his whole person, both the physical and the immaterial, into an encounter with the Church's otherworldly iconography and musicality, by beginning an exploration of the inner universe of the soul. If it is true, as Jesus said, that the kingdom of God is within you, then such a formulation points to an order that is indeed mystical, that reaches beyond what the analytical minds can comprehend. And while there is a place in orthodoxy for the analytical and the rational, we must be humble enough to realize that such faculties are not the only ones, and not even always the best ones, by which man may grasp knowledge and truth. As someone who is almost obsessed with how to connect my own flock to their rich heritage in the Orthodox faith, and also with how to connect those who do not yet know Orthodoxy, I've been asked sometimes exactly what I would say if someone were to come up and ask me, what is the Orthodox Church? More and more I find that question to be like this one. Who is your father? Well, where does one begin? He is the tall one. He is the one with glasses. He is the balding one. All true, yes, but who is your father? He is the witty one. He is the reliable one. He is the sharp-minded one. Also all true and better. But who is your father? I don't know what to say. I could talk about him for hours, but that would not be enough. I could write you a biography of him, but that could not summarize him. I think the best thing is to give you his phone number, to invite you over to have dinner with him, to bring him over to you in the crowd. Fundamentally, whether the introduction to Orthodox Christianity is out of academic curiosity, anthropological exploration, or a deep spiritual longing, the entrance into this world is best thought of as encounter. There is no definitive work on this subject because it cannot truly be defined, and because it is not really a subject. Definition is not the way to understanding here. And that said, perhaps I have just negated everything else I just said. But I hope nonetheless that we have pointed the way, at least a little, to experience this encounter. Thank you very much.
Questions for Father? Father, you go ahead and take them. Anyone? Just stand up and give a question for Father Andrew. Nobody has a question? Come on.
Father, I have a question. Actually, one of the first days on land when I took a cross path with you, my wife and I were visiting from Southern California, and we just happened to, I spoke with Father Simon. I told him he would be here in town. While I was in town, I was kind of trying to schedule arrange a tour of this church. You happened to be here, so we're very thankful and blessed for what you got to say today. My question is, essentially, what is the Orthodox stance you or current rapport with Eastern Catholic communities such as Byzantines, Maronite, Chaldeans, and what is the viewpoint from the Orthodox perspective of these churches?
Right. So, what I'm hearing, I think, is a question that can be divided into two parts, which is, what are relations like on the ground, and what is the high and mighty official stance?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll give you the latter first. The high and mighty official stance, hopefully not too high and mighty, is that Eastern Catholics, which can include, there's lots of different kinds of Eastern Catholics. There's Byzantine Catholics, there's Melkite Catholics, there's Ruthenian Catholics, there's Russian Catholics, there's Chaldean Catholics, there's Malabar Catholics. The list actually does go on. There's lots of different kinds of Eastern Catholics. Is there anyone, before I say this, is there anyone here who does not know who these people are? Anyone who's never heard of Eastern Catholicism? I'm stunned. You are incredibly well-educated people. Okay, that being said, since you all know where they are, the official position on these churches is that they are Catholics, just like Latin and Roman Catholics.